So large language models are trained on really huge data sets, so they're pulling as much data as they can from as many different sources as they can. Quality control for this web crawl data is not great. The people training models on it don't necessarily know what all is in there. There's a lot of open questions about what LLMs can and cannot do. They can appear to do all types of tasks, but it's really important to figure out what are the bounds of their abilities or capabilities.
Large language models are used in daily life to draft emails, analyze data, write reports, and more. In the federal government, LLMs included in the GenAI.mil suite power many day-to-day workflows in the Department of War. As LLM adoption expands into high-stakes contexts, and as these models are augmented with tools, memory, and other agentic capabilities, rigorous, repeatable testing will enable the DoW to use LLMs at speed and with confidence. To meet this demand, a research team in the SEI's AI division, led by Violet Turri, has developed a formal approach to evaluating large language models. Today, we'll talk about their library of tools for evaluating large language models, which provides a set of extensible, customizable tools designed to make LLM evaluations repeatable, explainable, and consistent. Welcome to the SEI Podcast Series. My name is Katie Robinson, and I'm an associate design researcher in the AI division at the SEI. Today, I'm pleased to welcome Violet Turri, an engineering team lead at the SEI's AI division. Welcome, Violet.
Thank you.
For our audience members who aren't familiar with you or your work, let's get started by you having and telling us a little bit about your background. You started at the SEI in 2020, and in that time, you've gone from being an assistant software developer to an engineering team lead. Can you tell us a little bit about your time in the SEI thus far and some of the amazing experiences you've had?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, starting at the SEI, I was, as you mentioned, a software developer. So I was supporting an experimental framework that we have called Juneberry, which is available open source, and that a team focused on adversarial AI research was using pretty heavily. So I got to learn a lot about what it means to have repeatable experiments and develop software around that. And then more recently, in the past couple of years, I got to lead a project looking at explainable AI. So a lot of that was about, which you were part of, a lot of that was about looking at explainable AI research and trying to figure out how do real world teams use AI and what kinds of need for explainability do they have, and how well do current research methods address those gaps in the knowledge that end users or the development teams have on how and why the AI is making the decisions it's making or processing information in the way it's processing it. So that was a really cool project, and I feel taught me a lot about how there are a number of open challenges that the government faces when they're adopting new technologies, where maybe a technology developed in industry or research doesn't quite meet the demands of their actual use case. And so that has been a really interesting challenge to look into in other work as well. So I feel as an FFRDC, we have a lot of opportunities to help bridge that gap. And so I think continuing to look for problems like that has helped me grow a lot as a researcher and a developer. And then more recently getting to work on this project. It's called ELM, stands for Evaluating Large Language Models, has been really cool. And yeah, so I think that's kind of my trajectory. It's just slowly finding new problems and enjoying tackling them. And being a team lead too has been really cool, because it's fun to actually help people kind of manage their career, their day-to-day, and try to find projects that are good for them as well.
That's awesome. And I will just say, you did an amazing job leading the XAI project.
Thank you.
And I did not know that's what ELM stood for. So that's great for this
important
podcast.
to know. Yeah.
So, ELM, Evaluating Large Language Models. So this sort of leads into the next question pretty perfectly. But can you tell us why it's so important to have such a formal approach to evaluating large language models?
Yeah, so large language models are trained on really huge data sets, and a lot of the time it's kind of just a web crawl, so they're pulling as much data as they can from as many different sources as they can. But so quality control for this web crawl data is not great, and they also don't, the people training models on it don't necessarily know, just given the volume of data, what all is in there, and all of the relationships that the large language model is learning from the data.
For sure.
So there's a lot of open questions about what LLMs can and cannot do. They can appear to do all types of tasks, but it's really important to figure out what are the bounds of their abilities or capabilities. So Yeah, so there are a lot of open questions in that space, and so when people are looking to use an LLM to power a specific task or application, it's really important to actually evaluate and test how well they can perform how well LLMs can perform different tasks, not to anthropomorphize LLMs. So there's a lot of different benchmarks that look at this. So there are some that are kind of general capabilities like memory or ability to answer questions. Summarizing content has been a really big topic. There are also domain-specific benchmarks. So there are a lot of exams that humans take, and basically they turned those into different kinds of benchmarks for LLMs to see, like, well, how well could an LLM do at the MCAT or the LSAT, and then there's also more project-specific kinds of benchmarks. So this project's looking a lot at those benchmarks and thinking how can we further like evaluation of LLMs and then also agents. So yeah, it's one of those challenges where a lot of people are interested in using LLMs and they can do a lot of things, but defining the problems that they're going to solve and then actually testing how well they can solve them is really important.
Right. No, that makes complete sense. I mean, it's really great to know that we have these tools, but to like actually understand the boundaries of how we're using them and to like give people guidance on that as well. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So it was sort of mentioned in the intro, but can you tell us a little bit more about the ELM library that your team developed and what its key features are?
Yeah, so we have a great team of developers who have been working on this open source library of tools for LLM evaluation, and some of the most recent changes that they pushed to the library were this newest iteration of the inference and evaluation engines. So these are basically tools so that you can test your large language model by having it run inference on a set of different prompts and then also evaluating performance. So it's designed to plug in with different kinds of families of models and then also different off-the-shelf benchmarks, or you could input your own benchmark, and it helps make this process repeatable and more explainable as well.
All right. And can you tell us a little bit more about how important repeatability is in a process like this?
Yeah, LLMs and machine learning models in general they're not necessarily going to produce the same answer to the same question twice. Mm-hmm. So you want to run tests multiple times and prompt an LLM with the same question multiple times.
Right.
And you also want to have the ability to know that all other factors in the scenario are kept the same. So repeatability is about making sure that you're running these evaluations in the same experimental conditions across different trials. So I think that's a really important piece to make sure that the experiments are actually like valid and can be done by another team or repeated, and that even though there can be variation in LLM responses, knowing that all of the other factors are the same is important.
For sure. And you mentioned explainability in there too. So I guess that leads into my next question of like, who is this library for? Who can use this library? Is it more suitable for the government? Is it more suitable for those working in industry, academia? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would stress, so there are some commercial tools out there now, and this isn't a commercial tool. This is a group of researchers building a tool primarily for other researchers to use the tools, although it could be used by anyone who's interested in LLM evaluation. Mm-hmm. But there are a couple features of our ELM library in particular that I think make it a good fit for government research use. So as an example, the inference and evaluation engines are decoupled, so you could run inference and evaluation in different places. Mm-hmm. It's a free tool, it's open source, there's no vendor lock-in, and it's a good tool for people who are trying to work with benchmarks or LLMs that may include sensitive data or be trained on sensitive data where you're trying to run everything locally and you don't want information or results like being shared outside of your development environment.
And then you mentioned previously, there was a decoupling between the inference and the evaluation. Can you talk a little bit more about that in terms of, is it unique? Is that sort of how tools like this are run? What does that bring to your tool and people who are using it? Yeah, there are a lot of tools out there where you have to run inference and then run evaluation right afterwards, or like they're pretty closely linked, so you have to have this take place in the same environment around the same time. But this makes it easier to not have to run like those inferences again and again. You can just run inference someplace, have a set of results, and then push them through the eval engine. So that makes it easier to develop. And if you have to kind of fragment those two and do those in separate places or at different times, it's not a big deal. Right. Very cool. So much of today's focus, we're hearing a lot about agentic systems, and we know that LLMs are a big part of that. So could you tell us a little bit more about what an agentic system is and how they can be evaluated?
Yeah, so LLMs are really the backbone of agentic systems. Agentic systems are basically just systems that are using LLMs, but they give the LLMs access to different tools or memory or other capabilities so that the LLM can take different kinds of actions within an environment. And so similar to LLMs, if you want to test an agentic system, you can present a set of like prompts for the agentic system to complete and then evaluate performance. But it's a little bit different in that instead of just seeing what the output is, you're going to care how the agent produced that outcome and want to look at what the workflow is. So like you, generally speaking, when building agentic systems, provide some level of autonomy to the agent, which is really just like this LLM that is kind of specially designed to take actions. And you'll want to know if and how it's making use of tools. Is it efficient? Does it make sense? Is it logically sound? And so I think LLM evaluation is just as important as ever, if not even more important, because we're essentially giving LLMs more autonomy and ability to make decisions on our systems. So we really want to know what LLMs will do, and then also how well they can achieve different things. So yeah, I think benchmarking LLMs is still a super important challenge, and then also looking at kind of that LLMs plus, aka agentic systems, is really important open area.
For sure. I like logically sound for benchmarking agentic AI. I think that makes a lot of sense. And we're starting to see agentic AI used much more frequently. So it's fantastic to hear that that's what your team is focused on. So as a federally funded research and development center, an important aspect of our work is transition. So we know that the ELM Library is available on GitHub, and we'll link to that in our transcript. But are there any other resources that are available for people to access?
Yeah, so we have a couple of blog posts that I would recommend people take a look at that are related to ELM. So there's Evaluating LLMs for Text Summarization, which provides an introduction to how you would go about evaluating LLMs for this scenario and like what performance looks like for that. And then we also have a blog post that provides a tutorial. It explains how to use the ELM evaluation engine and kind of just gives a rundown of how that's set up so that researchers or engineers who want to use our tools actually know how to use them.
That's awesome. I will check them out. And for anybody else who's curious, they'll be available through a link in our description below. So Violet, you're doing so much interesting stuff in this space. What's next for you in this research area?
Well, thank you. So next, we're really focusing on agentic evaluation. As I mentioned, I think the topic of LLM evaluation is still super important, especially there's some kind of like maybe gray area where it's like LLM-powered tools, and then at some point it turns into agents. But anywhere along that spectrum, I think evaluation is really important. Sure. But so in the next part of the research, our focus is really about agentic evaluation and questions about practically, like from a AI engineering perspective, how do you generate benchmarks for AI agents? If you have a specific project, how do you kind of map out what the agent's expected to do and then build out tasks and tests that actually evaluate performance on those specific goals that you have? So in the future, probably come August, we're hoping to push a version of an agentic evaluation pipeline that'll include some tools for generating benchmarks given some source material, and then also kind of building on this open source framework called Harbor, make it easy to plug those benchmarks into Harbor, and then also have a set of tests as well. So
very cool.
Yeah.
So, you've talked about what's upcoming. What are you most excited about in this area?
Yeah, I think the topic of how to actually build benchmarks and scale them is really interesting to me. Mm-hmm. In working on this, our goal is in this next set of work, is to build out a framework that people can use to generate their own benchmarks. And one of the challenges is going from maybe a detailed description of how the process is done today by humans, and then figuring out, okay, well, what could an agent do in this process? How would you kind of like define those tasks and tests, and then also help build out a set of scenarios so that you're not just looking at how well the agent performs at the task under one scenario, but maybe in a scenario where information's limited or conflicting and so on. So right. I think the challenge of translating from different, like across different kinds of documents is an interesting one. And then also scaling this so that more teams can do this.
Right.
In reading a lot about this, including like how industry is approaching it, a lot of teams just kind of build stuff and see how well their LLMs can do at different tasks, but it's all kind of like anecdotal, or it's like vibe testing, and then at some point they realize, okay, no, we need to rigorously evaluate how well this agent works. And then I think that's the biggest gap right now that I see that I think is really interesting, is just how do you make it a whole lot easier to do these evaluations.
Right. I mean, I feel like scale is like one of the next big questions that people are really going to start to deal with. And I think we've already started to see like vibe testing can only get you so far. And then you get to a point and you're like, well, now what?
Yeah.
So it's great to hear that that's sort of like an up and coming area that you're really interested in exploring.
Yeah. I think it'll be really cool as we explore it in more detail, and hopefully there will be more to come and share as we work on it.
I will stay tuned. I'm ready. Well, Violet, thank you so much for talking with us today. We'll include links to the transcript in the transcript to the resources mentioned during the podcast, including the recent blog on this topic. Finally, as a reminder to our audience that our podcasts are available on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as the SEI's YouTube channel. And if you like what you see and what you hear today, please give us a thumbs up. Violet, thank you so much for joining us. For everyone listening and watching, thank you all so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.